Hello and welcome back to another video where I'm going to be talking about tanks. It'll be any champion which has a variation of a tank build they can go, or it's just straight up a tank. So for example, GP has an Iceborne variation, which isn't bad, and I'm going to gauge that in terms of how strong it is against the other tanks. So for example, I'd say it's pretty weak. It's not as good as his main build, and even lining up to the other tanks, you're not going to be playing GP primarily as a tank. It's just an alternative if you're against an AD comp and you want to be more tanky as your like primary frontline or something. So it's weak, but it works. Something like that. Vayne doesn't really have a viable tank build. I guess you can maybe consider Iceborne Vayne, but it's not really played at all, so I'm not going to really put it in a tier. Tryndamere doesn't really have a tank build. Tryndamere has a tank build in ARAM. It's really good. Actually, wait, he wouldn't anymore. Sunfires is no longer a mythic. Tryndamere probably doesn't have an ARAM tank build, but he did. So I'm going to put him down here. Coin doesn't have a tank build. Garen's tank build is pretty awful. People seem to like enjoy going Heartsteel on Garen. From what I can tell, it doesn't perform anywhere near as well as his other builds, so don't do it. It's bad. It's really bad. Right, Aurelia. I'm gonna consider Aurelia's Jackshow build as a tank build. I'm gonna class any champ which was a tank mythic or primarily health items as someone with a tank variation. For example, Aurelia's Shilbo variation would be her more bruiser, skirmisher, fighter variation. Yeah, it's probably overpowered. It's really, really good at the moment. Definitely worth going. Something like Bork or Ravenous into it. Super good at the moment. Graves doesn't have a tank variation. Neither does Olaf. Neither does Pantheon. Rengar can have a tank variation. I don't think it's really played at all anymore. If you remember SOFM's Tank Rengar, that one is a bit memorable. Yeah, it doesn't really exist. I'd say that you can, but it's probably weak compared to the rest of his builds. But not as weak as Garen. Garen just shouldn't go tank. It doesn't really help him. Iceborne Teemo used to exist. I don't think it does anymore. Tank Kled. Now, Kled used to be a really good Sunfires user back when Sunfires worked with his bonus mount health, so it would make him incredibly strong with the item. Jackshow is alright on him, but not really played at all. So I'd say it's probably weak compared to other champs which you can build to tank. It might even be average. Tankled does work, so yeah, it'll be around here. Iceborne Alawi, it might be her best mythic, so we'll have a quick look at that. I think because of how situational Iceborne is, the way you're gonna have to gauge its power is compared to the other ones, like where it's being built and how strong it is in where it's being built. So Iceborne, when built correctly on Alawi, is really good. It works really well as a first and second item if you're going something like Cleaver, or you're going something like Iceborne into Sterix or Hullbreaker. There's a lot you can do with it. It's probably borderline overpowered, so definitely give it a try. Tank Alawi, definitely something worth playing. Aatrox, from what I know, is actually really good with Jackshow. Yeah, absurdly good with Jackshow. Ravenous into Jackshow looks really strong at the moment, and then Shrouders Death Stance, so really good. Probably overpowered, actually. Looks really good in the data, so definitely consider going it. Camille and Fiora, I'm going to group these two, because they always have kind of tank variations where you go like a tank item into Titanic. It's not as strong as their current version, because Ravenous is as good as it is, but it was always playable. I don't see any really playing it at the moment. I'm going to quickly look at Fiora after looking at Camille. Yeah, neither of them really play their tank variations at the moment. I wonder if we'll see that Rise once Ravenous and maybe Divine Sun will get nerfed. Ravenous is definitely getting a chunk taken out of it. It's not gonna change why it's strong, but it does. It's like a placebo nerf almost. It will do something, but not change the overall power level of the item that much. So I'll put them down here. They don't really have a viable tank build. Renekton, I think, can use Jackshow. Probably still a Prowler's user, but yeah, Jackshow works on Renekton. Probably something like Bork into Jackshow or Ravenous into Jackshow. Yeah, it definitely looks like it. Might work. Can work. So I'd say it's pretty good. Riven might be a Jackshow user. Doesn't really strike me as one. Your drink is a really valuable item for her. She has the lethality variations as well. Not a lot of Jackshow play rate, so not really a viable build. Set with Iceborne. Well, old Frostfire used to be really good. Does he build Iceborne? Not really. He's building so many people build Heartsteel on him, but it's just not that great compared to his other builds. Tank set is pretty weak, so yeah, compared to his other builds at least. Jax is an Iceborne user if he needs to be. The other two Sheen items are also really good on him, so you can kind of be flexible. Jackshow works on him. Definitely a pretty strong. He's pretty good as a tank variation if you need it. Poppy can only really go tank. She has the Divine Cinder variations, but it's better jungle. It's actually better top as well. Yeah, Divine Cinder Poppy's probably her best variation. That's mainly because of all the health stackers at the moment. Iceborne, Heartsteel. Jackshow is her highest win rate, least games played, but it doesn't look bad. Poppy on average is a pretty meh tank. She counters the meta well, which is why she's strong, but when the meta changes and develops, and maybe things like Fiora and Aurelia fall out of it, she definitely drops down quite a bit. Because right now she counters a Fiora, Aurelia, Camille, who are all really, really good at the moment. So I'd say she's good. Probably better than... it might not even be as good as Jax. Lilia doesn't have a tank variation. Singed is really good at the moment. Borderline over... Singed might be overpowered with his. If you go Jackshow, Singed is really, really strong at the moment. Nah. People like building Heartsteel on him. But it's basically Triforce. Sundara is pretty good where you can build it. Iceborne would strike me as probably his best tank mythic. It does also look like it's probably his best tank mythic. Tank Gnar with Iceborne is probably pretty average. It's good when you need it, but other than that, not really. Nasus, really good with Iceborne. Definitely looks quite good. Has all the options as well. Tank Nasus is probably an A tier pick. Urgot is really strong with lethality, but if you're going with tank variation, he's also pretty strong. Probably as strong as these guys up here, so yeah, it's definitely worth playing both, but Prowler is by far his best. Sion is pretty bad at the moment, getting buffed next patch, and then we're gonna measure it off the buffs next patch. Sunfires is also being buffed next patch, so some of these which are good Sunfires users might go up, like your Heartsteel users, which can go Sunfires second, or Titanic into Sunfires. Sion is definitely a Titanic user. Iceborne's not bad on him, but I don't see him really changing too much with the buff, so he's probably just a pretty average tank. I genuinely don't see how mana growth, base mana, and Q base damage are gonna push him up too much. He would mainly get buffed by the Sunfire's changes, and if he gets, I think because Sunfire's being buffed and it's probably his third item, maybe we see him as being a good tank, but he could honestly fall around here. Mundo is being changed really heavily next patch. I predict Mundo is going to be pretty weak next patch though. The changes don't look amazing, and I think people will know him for what his current playstyle is and then have to adjust, and I think adjusting will be hard, and I think he's weak even after adjusting, so he's probably around D tier for next patch. Trundle is getting nerfed quite hard. Trundle's Iceborne isn't as good as his Triforce or Sundara builds, so he's probably going to end up kind of weak out of it, but we'll have to see. Volibear, really hard at the moment in the top lane. The mythics feel bad on him, and he's only really good when Iceborne's a viable item in the game. So he's good if it's an Iceborne game, but overall as a tank, he's probably pretty weak right now. I'll put him around here. Jace doesn't have a tank variation. I'll be interested to see if like someone can think of a tank variation where the numbers make it so he feels good as a tank, but also does the damage. With when they made it so his resistances on his melee form have AD scaling. Maybe something like a Titanic only sit in melee form kind of build emerges, but unlikely. Warwick is really good with Iceborne. Really good with Ravenous as well at the moment. Is also a good bulk user. I think Warwick as a tank is pretty good. Warwick top has surged in popularity this patch. Oh yeah, Jackshow is also really strong on him. So definitely a strong tank. You have good options there. But maybe borderline overpowered. We'll have to see. Darius is another tank variation. Iceborne can work on him on the odd occasion, but I don't think it's played enough to really consider it a variation of Darius. Jackshow is played more as well. It doesn't look bad. Like Jackshow Darius might work in certain games. Maybe if we're talking about Jackshow Darius when it's average, but Darius is kind of is probably overpowered if you're building him as the bruiser he should be. There is definitely options as tank Darius. Wukong doesn't have a tank variation over the Silas. No, there's Rumble, Gwen, Cassie. Tank Rise. I don't think that exists anymore, does it? They've nerfed him, his base values too much, and they've been buffing his ratios, so I don't really see Tank Rise doing anything. Yeah, Tank Rise kind of sucks as well. Yeah, I'll put it in E tier, because people will say Tank Rise and point at it. Heartsteel Vladimir. No, that's an E tier pick for that. Don't go Heartsteel Vladimir. Night Harvester is so much better. Tank Akali. Turbo Akali used to be really good at one point, and then they had to change it because it synergized too well with Dash champions like Aurelia and Akali. Akali's best build is Night Harvester. Definitely doesn't really have a tank variation. People like going Heartsteel on her. Not performing particularly well. It's very weak if you are choosing to go it. Yorick's mostly bruiser. He might have a tank variation. I guess you could consider that a Iceborne with a 5% pick rate, a tank variation. It doesn't look great, so it's probably just kind of weak. Swain, Jackshow Swain is not as good as Liandry Swain in the current meta. It might shift if Liandry's gets nerfed or Roa gets buffed more. But for the moment, it's probably weak. I'd say Jackshow Swain's weak. It's not a... but then if I was bumping it lower than Darius... Darius is just a stronger champ at the moment than Swain, which is why. I'll put it on the same tier as Darius. It's average. If you're going Liandry Swain though, he's A tier. He's definitely strong. There's no tank Jaime. I guess tank Yon and Yasuo. They're actually probably their best builds in the top lane at the moment. But that's mainly because Bulk Rush is really strong. Yeah, tank Yasuo definitely looks really good at the moment. I think if you're going... I think they're around here. If you need them, they're an option. Gragas. Tank Gragas is better than AP Gragas at the moment if you go Iceborne. But it has to be a good Iceborne game. And even then, it's average, weak around this area. Sejuani really suffered from this patch. Heartsteel doesn't feel good on Sejuani in the top lane. It's still probably her best mythic. Maybe Radiant Virtue and Jackshow though. Both have higher win rates. Tank Sejuani is just kind of very average, almost weak at the moment. I think it's weak. I'm gonna put it down here. I just don't really see Sejuani synergizing well enough with any of the items. And it would have to be a meta swing where some of the top champs come down, like Fiora, because Sejuani just can't play into Fiora. A good Fiora. If you're bad at Fiora, then yeah. But point, don't play Fiora. Play other champs. Fiora's a pretty hard champ to play. Maokai's being buffed again for next patch, so we're going to go off the buffs. Passive healing's going up, Q monster damage is going up, but we don't really care about that because we're top laners. Q base damage is also going up, which we do care about because that's really huge for trading. Jaxo is his best mythic, definitely. Maybe we'll see Heartsteel rise up with more healing on it, but I'm going to presume Jaxo and Iceborne are the way to go. Right now, I think he's good at the moment. His data is mainly bogged down by Heartsteel users, but Maokai is good, and he's probably going to be strong next patch. Maybe borderline overpowered, we'll have to see. So I'll put Maokai in the A tier. Cassante is really, really good with Jaxo. Definitely build Jaxo Cassante. Iceborne is good when you need it. Cassante as a champion is very high skill. Lots of things you can do with him. He's overloaded, but I mean, most champions are on release. He's borderline strong, but I'd say he's just good for the moment. People still don't seem to have... people aren't building him correctly where he needs to be built correctly, and that hurts his data. Plus, he's hard, so he's around here. I'd say he's strong if you're looking Diamond 2+, but if you're looking Plat+, then he's around. He's probably B tier. You can't just pick him up, play him, and expect to do well, unlike other champs, other tanks in the top lane. Cho'Gath is already bad at the moment. Doesn't have a mythic which really synergizes for him. His buffs are good. Maybe we'll see W max first Cho'Gath. The ult one is nice as well. Means he has more uptime on it later on into the game where he really wants it to be up more. I think he goes from being probably a very weak champ to good. We'll have to see. He'll be somewhere around average and good. I think he'll be good, but we'll have to see. Udyr's tank variation isn't anywhere near as good as his AD variation at the moment. AD Udyr is really good. Jaxo is his most played mythic in the top lane. It should probably be Triforce, but that's played only 10% of the time. I'd say tank Udyr is probably around A and B, C and B. So I'll put him in beta. I don't think he's as niche or as bad as these ones, but it's not strong enough to go up here. I think I've put Volibear too high. I think because of the situation he has to be in to make it good, Iceborne good, then he's too high for where he should be. Zac, I think, will be overpowered next patch. I think the changes are way too good for him. He is gaining healing on his passive. He's gaining QCD. He's gaining Q damage. These changes are so huge for Zac. And Zac's already good if you go Jaxo. You can even go Heartsteel some games. There is options for it if you can proc it. It doesn't feel good to use on Zac, but there are games where it can work. Jaxo is definitely his best. Go Jaxo Demonic. Sometimes he's being buffed as well, which is also another buff for Zac. Zac will be around here. I'm going to presume he'll be S tier. Mordekaiser is already really, really good. Ravenous being nerfed is huge for Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser is being nerfed for the jungle, which will hurt his top lane. But Mordekaiser is really, really good at the moment. Is he as good as these champs? Yeah, probably. He also answers a lot of the meta. It'll be Rylai's Demonic into the other one, into Jaxo or Riftmaker. Jaxo is his tank variation. You can also go Iceborne. Jaxo is probably better. Definitely really strong at the moment. Play Mord. I recommend it. Karma. Tank variation of Karma doesn't look good. Roa is her best mythic in the top lane. She's probably around here. You know what? She's very weak. If you're going with tank variation, she's weak. Don't go tank Karma. It's not good. Shen. Looks really good with heart still. Data hasn't really adjusted to the other tank mythics. His Heartsteel win rate is still really good for the item being pretty weak, I'd say. So Yeah, Shen is definitely S tier at the moment. I wonder. I presume he'll see some nerfs going into 2023 season, but maybe not. Who knows? Maybe he stays strong. Tahm Kench is being adjusted massively next patch. I think Tahm Kench will be broken with the changes he's getting. He's already a pretty good Heartsteel user. He'll probably be S tier as well. Tahm is really easy to play as well, so it'll probably be Heartsteel, Demonics, and then variations of what the enemy are building and countering what the enemy are building. So Sunfire, Abyssal, Thorn Mail. There's lots of things you can do. Ornn is pretty meh at the moment. Got hurt by Iceborne, Frostfire being changed and Iceborne going, which was its best mythic. Sunfire was also really good on him. Jaxo is his best mythic. It is definitely Jaxo into Sunfire as his best duo. You have options, but they're not great. You can go Abyssal, you can go Frozen Heart, and then third you can go something like Winter's Approach as his build, but he's not as strong as he used to be. He was an S tier tank, definitely. He's probably fringe B tier, but I'll put him in A. I think there's still things. If it was bad putting him in A, I think he's a B tier champ. He's not as strong as he used to be. His glory days are definitely over. Malphite is getting buffed the next patch. It's another one I haven't placed because of it. They're removing the W changes and giving him more to his E from a follow-up, I'm pretty sure. Malphite in the right spots is good. Maybe he'll be strong, but you're gonna have to play Malphite in the correct spots. He's being pushed even further towards the armor builds, so yeah, he'll be strong, but you have to play him in the correct spots. I think this is good for champ. So overall, this isn't gonna be this isn't a tier list on them compared to the rest of the field. It's them on a tank level basis. Tanks as a class right now are probably, this would be like A tier, low A tier kind of level. Maybe this is A tier in an actual tier list, but with Fiora and Aurelia, Camille reigning kind of supreme on the current meta, Darius being really strong, tanks struggle, and the items feel kind of bad on them at the moment. So we'll have to see how it goes into main season. Champs will get adjusted, tank items will also get adjusted, and hopefully that puts us in a better spot. But overall, this is a pretty accurate representation of what tanks you should be playing and what champs you should be avoid going tank variations or just not really playing at the moment. So thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.